Hi everyone, this video goes with your APA number 4. This week we're going to be talking about in-text citations. Now you may have seen some of the information about in-text citations already in some of the other sections that you've read in our textbook, or if you've already been introduced to APA format or already feel confident with it. So this video is going to walk you through some of the basic citations that you'll be using. Now, there's a difference. If you've read the textbook, you'll note there's a difference between in-text citations and a reference list. So a reference list, for those of you familiar with MLA or other styles, that is a list of texts, books or websites or magazine articles, films that you've actually used in your paper. That's where you actually list them all at the end of your paper. The in-text citations are a little bit different. These are usually within parentheses, or at least partially in parentheses, and it's information about the source that you're quoting or paraphrasing in that particular sentence. So remember that we need a parenthetical citation whether we are paraphrasing or whether we are quoting. Now, if we're just summarizing, we actually don't need a parenthetical citation. But we definitely need it if we're going to be paraphrasing specific ideas or quoting material. Remember again that a summary is just a very brief sentence or note about what a source is about. The paraphrase is your own language, but is about a specific idea that the author is talking about. You may want to look back at your past reading if that isn't clear to you, or you can email me or stop in some time and we can chat about it, or you can ask in class. So the basic format for a quotation needs to have, for an in-text citation for a quotation, needs to have the author last name, the year, and the page number. And there are a couple different ways that we can do that. So this is going to be my quoted material or my sentence that I'm going to be citing. All right, wouldn't that be nice, right? So let's say that that's our sentence that's actually in our paper or our document. And of course, the quoted material has the quotation marks around it. Well, we want to know what study or article or magazine that's from. So we're going to pretend like it's from an article written by John Smith. Okay, that's a pretty benign name. John Smith. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to back up and I'm going to put my quotation mark at the end of that sentence. I'm going to hit the space bar one time. I'm going to open my parentheses and I'm going to type my author's last name there. Now I need a comma followed by the year of publication. Let's say that the year of publication was 2016. So actually all these students earned A's in English 101 in 2015, right? And then we need a comma and we're going to need a page number from that report or that article. Now, APA is very particular about the way you show page number. It should be a lowercase p, followed by a period, followed by a space, followed by the number. Close your parentheses and, excuse me, and end your sentence with a period. That is a basic in-text citation for a quote. Now, another way that we can do this is to remove actually the author so that we just have the year and the page number in parentheses. Excuse me. And we are, and actually, I'm sorry, we're going to remove the year too and just have the page number at the end. So here we can actually change our sentence and add a little more in-depth signal phrase to demonstrate that John Smith's article published in 2016 is the source we used. So we could say something like, according to Smith, 2016, close parentheses, comma, last year researchers found that nearly every student at NSE earned an A in English 101, and then the page number. So you see, for the basic format, we really have two options. We can include the author, the date, and the page number all at the end in parentheses, or we can include the author and the date in the signal phrase, and then the page number at the end. Now, one way I like to explain this to students is that the author and the year are best friends. We don't want to separate those. One of the reasons we don't want to separate those is because often in social sciences and other sciences, you'll see groups of people who complete research together, which means that they can produce more research in a shorter amount of time. In humanities, you'll often see single author papers where you just have one author. But when we have multiple authors or multiple studies going on, Smith could have 4 different articles coming out in 2016, or an article in 2016, one in 2015, one in 2014, 2013. You get the picture. So we always want to be really clear that this particular Smith we're talking about goes with this year. So we want to keep them together. Just remember that they're best friends. Now we need a page number if we are quoting. However, we don't need a page number if we're just paraphrasing. So let's say that I'm just going to paraphrase this idea. So I'm going to get rid of all this. So how could I paraphrase nearly every student at NSE earned an A in English 101? What if I said something like, the majority, oh, that's not right. The majority of the student of, let's see, NSE's student body earned an A in composition 1. Okay, well, that's a little bit different. That's probably different enough that it would be considered a paraphrase. Notice that a paraphrase takes the quote and puts it into your own language in about the same amount of words or space. Now, this doesn't need to be exact. You don't have to count words, but if you're paraphrasing an idea that's 3 sentences long and you're only condensing it into 1 sentence or half a sentence, that's probably not a true paraphrase. So we just want to take the same idea and we want to put it in different language. So there, for the paraphrase, you see we don't have a page number, but we do still have the author and the year, okay? This is probably what you'll use most commonly, but you might also use the 2-author system. So in a 2-author system, again, we can introduce our authors in a signal phrase. So we might say Smith and Roebuck. So Smith and Roebuck in 2016, and that's their finding that the majority of NSC student body earned an A. Of course, we could always move Smith and Roebuck to the end of the sentence, right? If we don't want to have them in our signal phrase. So I'm just going to cut them out of there and sort of revise our sentence again. And I'm going to put them at the end. Now they're going to have to go in parentheses, of course. And I'm going to need a comma in between the authors and the date. Now, this is still a paraphrase, so I don't need my page number, but this fancy thing happens in APA when we switch the authors from the signal phrase to the parenthetical phrase, and we have 2 or more authors, we're actually going to see an ampersand replace that word and. So the ampersand is the and sign. So there you can see 2 ways to do that 2-author system. Now, if you read through your book, you're going to see that there are a little bit different rules for 3 to 5 authors. So in 3 to 5 authors, you're actually going to introduce all of their names the first time. So the first time you mention them, Smith, Roebuck, Johnson, Black, and when, comma, 2016. Now again, we're going to need that ampersand because it's in the parenthetical citation. So the first time we referred to them, we would refer to all of these authors. However, if I were going to include another quote by them, so something like, researchers also demonstrated that students loved their composition 1 courses. Let's say I want to include them in the second citation, I'm going to put them here. Make sure I have my parentheses, except this time it'll be Smith, Roebuck. Sorry, it'll be Smith. At this point, sorry, you'll only use the first author. So you'll do Smith et al., comma, 2016. So there you can see that you'll only be using that first author after you mention them all the first time, okay? Same thing, if you wanted to put these instead of at the end, you wanted to put them at the beginning. Last year, you can say Smith, Roebuck, Johnson, Black, and Wynn. And of course, we need 2016. Found that the majority of NSC's students earned an A in Composition 1. And then if we want to move this up here, do the same thing. Smith et al., 2016, also demonstrated. So the et al. Just means and others, essentially. So again, there's two different ways that you can do 3 to 5 authors. Remember that you only mention all the authors the first time, and then after that, you've got just that first author. Now, if you're going to have 6 or more authors, we only are going to refer to that first author. So it wouldn't matter if there were 6 or more. We'll see that in the reference list, but in our actual paper, the body of our paper, we're only going to refer to that first one. Now, if you're perhaps citing an anonymous source, which probably isn't going to happen too often, but it could happen, especially if there's a pamphlet that doesn't have an author, or sometimes like a website might not have an author, but we also have ways to format a website, then we would actually just use the title of the pamphlet or the anonymous source. So here, our source might be NSC Tutorial Services, fact sheet, something like that. And we're going to put our comma inside, and then our year. So again, it could be 2016. So that's how it would look if you didn't have an author and you just had a title. You can also do organization by author. So let's say that this wasn't actually the title of the pamphlet, but this was actually, you were citing NSC Tutorial Services. That would be the organization. So the whole tutorial services department put together this research study or collected this data. So we would do something like that. Your book also includes what to do with authors with the same last name, 2 or more works by the same author, 2 or more works in the same parentheses. There we're actually going to want to make sure that they appear in the same order that we see them in the reference list, so they're easy to find, and we're going to want to separate them by semicolons. So coming back to here, let's say I have Smith, Roebuck, and Wynn. I'm going to put them down here. Now, NSC Tutorial Services, that's going to come first because it starts with an N. Smith actually starts with an S, so it's going to come after N. So I'm going to post it there. So there you can see what I would do if I had a couple different sources. So of course, this being my first source, Smith being my second source, and let's say, oh, I'm sorry, that shouldn't be there. And let's say I had one more source, Winters and Marks, comma, 2013. So there you can see those are all in alphabetical order. And that's if I had 3 sources that were actually saying that same thing. Of course, these are made up sources. There's also a way to cite a web sources. But you do them the same that you would do a print source or something. So you would use the author and the year. And of course, if you quote something, you might not have a page number. If you don't have a page number, then you can use paragraph numbers preceded by the abbreviation for paragraph, which would be PARA, and then actually give us the paragraph number. So let's say that, let's see, I'm going to actually move this to the end. Make sure I have my parentheses. I want to put a page number in here, or a paragraph number. I could do PARA period 14. That could be for paragraph 14. Remember, I want my ampersand, and I need to actually fix my sentence. So it says researchers. All right, so we've looked at a couple different ways to include some in-text citations. For a web source, of course, if it doesn't have an author, then we can just use the title, just like an anonymous source. There are a couple other sources that you might use, but these are really the most prominent that you'll find. In fact, you'll probably be working with single author and 2 authors, or possibly 3 authors the most. Sometimes you'll see the 6 or more authors, especially in some of those research studies, because they work together on large research teams. My guess is you'll also be using some web sources at some point, although some instructors will ask you not to bring in any web sources. So that's something that you'll need to ask other instructors about before using them. This concludes your video on in-text citations. I've shown you how to use the single author, the dual author, 3 to 5 authors, and 6 or more authors, as well as anonymous documents, web documents, and multiple sources in one parenthetical citation, as well as how to use page numbers and paragraph numbers. One last thing I want to point out is that in APA, the past tense is preferenced. So for instance, last year researchers found, this verb found is past tense. I can also guess this because it says last year, but even if I took that out, I could still say researchers have found. So again, we're looking at a past tense. In the second sentence, you can see researchers also demonstrated. Demonstrated is past tense. Generally, we refer to them as in past tense because they are findings that have already been found in a previous study. Now, sometimes that previous study is only a few months old, but again, it's something that has already happened. So we see it in the past tense a lot. This is a little bit different for those of you coming from MLA, where we often write about literature in the present tense. Please let me know if you have questions. Good luck on your quiz.